All four original members of Black Sabbath reunite for their final show, and they mean it this time. There are some Oasis vinyl reissues on the way that fans are going to be excited about. And how long should a rock concert be? We're going to break it all down on this edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rock News Roundup podcast, your source for the latest in rock music news, reviews, and discussion here on the Nick Chino Music Channel. I'm your host, Nick Chino. Thank you very much for joining me for this episode of the show. We got the mics on, we got the devil horns up, and I'm here to talk about the latest and greatest in the world of rock music news. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'd really appreciate it if you like, share, and subscribe to the channel and share this episode with your fellow rock fans. I really appreciate that. If you're listening to the audio only version, you can do that on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I really appreciate a rating and review, and you can follow me on social media at Nick Chino Music. And if you're watching this episode on YouTube, my latest video is up on the channel right now, and that is my rock albums ranked for one of my favorite British bands of all time, Doves. Their new album, their sixth studio record, Constellations for the Lonely, comes out this Friday. So I thought, what better time than now to go back and listen to the records again and rank all of their albums from least favorite to favorite. It's something I really like to do whenever a band puts out a new record. I like to go back, rank the albums, get all hyped up for the new record. And so looking forward to the new album from Doves coming out this weekend. Definitely going to do a review for that here on the channel. But in the meantime, you can go to the channel right now and check out my rock albums ranked for Doves. And for the headliner topics on this episode of the podcast, we're going to be talking about how long should rock concerts be. Jack White has fired against his fans on Instagram who've been complaining that his live shows have been a tad too short. So we're going to talk about really what is the ideal length for a rock concert in 2025. Also, Oasis have announced a couple of really key upcoming vinyl reissues and some other news items I want to break down on this episode of the show, because obviously I can never get enough of talking about Oasis. But the first topic that we're going to talk about on this episode of the podcast is that Black Sabbath are back again. But this is the last time. For real this time. They absolutely mean it this time. Black Sabbath is returning to their hometown of Birmingham, England, where it all began, what they dub the birthplace of metal. It is a pretty metal town for what they're dubbing their final show with the four original members of Black Sabbath: Ozzy Osbourne, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward. It's been called Back to the Beginning, and they have assembled what is an insane lineup of metal legends to join them for this final show. Let me pull up this poster for you so you guys can take a look. Back to the Beginning, the final show with all four original members of Black Sabbath, happening Saturday, July the 5th at Villa Park in Birmingham, UK. And then just look at this lineup. It's absolutely insane. Performances, of course, from Black Sabbath, and Ozzy Osbourne is going to be doing a solo set as well. But then look at the opening bands, quote unquote opening bands for this show. You got Metallica, Slayer, Pantera, Gojira, Alice in Chains, Hailstorm, Lamb of God, Anthrax, Mastodon. That is a who's who of metal bands, all of which I'm sure were very much influenced by Black Sabbath in their music and for the reasons why they're playing in bands in the first place. So very cool for them to be paying tribute. But then you go down a little bit further on the poster and you see the additional performances from people like Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins. And him and Tony Iommi did a really cool collaboration track back in 2000 on one of Tony Iommi's solo records. David Draymond from Disturbed is going to be there. Duff McKagan of Guns N' Roses. Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit. Lizzie Hale of Hailstorm, of course, Jake E. Lee, Jonathan Davis of Korn, KK Downing, Mike Borden of Faith No More, Papa V. Perpetua from Ghost, as well as Rudy Sarzo, Sammy Hagar, of course, of Van Halen, Slash, because Slash is he's always doing these events. He's got to be there. Members of Sleep Token, Tom Morello, and then Wolfgang Van Halen is going to be there as well, which I think is really cool. So this is not actually the first time that Black Sabbath has done a quote unquote final show. They actually did the same thing back in 2017 with a tour called The End of the End. That was the final show of that tour, but original drummer of Black Sabbath, Bill Ward, was not part of those celebrations. So that is the key difference between that final show and this final show, is that Bill Ward is going to be there, one of the original members of Black Sabbath. And you know what? They mean it this time. I think this could be finally the end of the road for for Black Sabbath, because obviously Ozzy Osbourne has been experiencing some health issues in recent years. Still very active in the studio, though. He's released a couple of records over the last few years. He released Patient Number 9 in 2022 and An Ordinary Man in 2020. But you think about it, not many bands get to do this kind of thing. They're going out on a high note, or they're going out on their own terms, and not really a lot of bands of their era, of the Black Sabbath era, the late 60s going into the 70s, could have all four members be part of a reunion / final show like this. I think that is a pure blessing from the rock and roll gods that Black Sabbath still has all four original members living for this final show. You think about Led Zeppelin, obviously they lost John Bonham a long time ago. The Beatles, that's not going to happen. Other bands of that era, Deep Purple doesn't even have, I saw them back last summer. They don't even have a lot of the original members in the band anymore. So this really is cool if you're a Black Sabbath fan, or if you just really love rock and metal in general. I think this is really cool. And like I said, I think it's really cool that the band's going to be going out on their own terms. It's going to be this giant love fest of big riffs, devil horns everywhere. The fans are going to be going crazy, because really this is an incredible lineup. The tickets for this show go on sale this Friday, February the 14th, and I'm sure they're going to sell out just like that, because this is going to be a one-of-a-kind show. It's not just Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne. You got all these other big names on there that are really going to move these tickets. And like I said, the lineup is insane. How they're going to be able to fit all of the artists into one show is beyond me. Like to have all of those bands on there, you have the additional performances. It's going to have to be like an all-day event. It's going to have to be more like a festival than a single show. It's an all-day event, and all these bands are going to be on stage. So unfortunately, I don't have the money or the means to get to Birmingham, England at this time to go to this show, but whoever does go is going to have a fabulous time. I know it's probably going to be a pretty penny to buy tickets for this show, especially considering that lineup. And the only other thing I was thinking is that it's kind of a shame that Ronnie James Dio couldn't be a part of this. He passed away a few years back, and it would have been really cool to see him for this kind of thing too, because obviously it's very much about Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne and the music that they made together. But then can you imagine if Ronnie James Dio was still alive and was able to go on there and do a cameo on stage? They could play a few Dio era Black Sabbath tracks, where it'd be that The Mob Rules or something like that. I think that would have been really cool. So unfortunately, Ronnie James Dio is no longer with us to be able to take part of this final show, but it really is about Black Sabbath. It's about Ozzy Osbourne and about that original lineup. And like I said, that's not really something that you get from a lot of bands of their era. This is going to be hopefully, a one-of-a-kind experience. I'm sure fans who went to the final show in 2017 thought that was going to be a one-of-a-kind experience. Like, this is going to be the end. This is going to be it. But as we know, with a lot of bands who retire or do their final show, it's very rarely ever the true final show. And that's okay, because I think this is going to be a very, very special experience for a lot of Black Sabbath fans. So the show is called Back to the Beginning. Tickets go on sale this Friday, February the 14th. But hop into the comments below and let me know what you think about Black Sabbath getting together for this final reunion, this final show where they're going to be having an amazing lineup of guests. Are you going to be footing the bill or getting on a plane to go over to Birmingham to go see the show? Maybe you're already in England and you're going to be going to the show. Let me know kind of what your excitement level is and what your interest level is for this Black Sabbath reunion. I think it's going to be really cool, and I'll be watching it from afar. And it's just great that Black Sabbath are going to be able to do this final show on their terms. So let me know in the comments below, what are your thoughts? And let's get to the next headliner topic on this edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast. And it's a little bit of an Oasis news roundup. There's been some movement in the band, nothing about the reunion or anything like that coming up later this year. They've been pretty quiet about that. But Oasis are actually among this year's Record Store Day exclusive releases. The entire list for the 2025 Record Store Day releases have been announced. They were announced that last week. I am going to do a more detailed video on the channel where I talk about all the releases that I'm excited about, kind of the notable releases for me. I'll be doing that at a future date. I did make a video about that last year, but I wanted to mention at least a couple of these things on the podcast, and that is Oasis are releasing a 15th anniversary LP edition of their singles collection, Time Flies, which came out in 2009. It's a deluxe edition 4 LP set on colored vinyl. Each set is going to be numbered. It collects all 26 of the band's singles from Supersonic all the way through to Falling Down. And was it on this or was it on Stop the Clocks? People can let me know in the comments whether Sunday Morning Call was left off of this off of this release, or it was released only as a bonus track. I can't really remember, but I was looking at this. It's actually really cool. If you look at it on the Oasis website, you can see a good look at the set. Very, very pretty looking set. The colored vinyl is always really cool. It is a deluxe set, so obviously you can tell there was a lot of care put into the general aesthetic and the sound. I think it's going to be remastered as well. So it does collect all 26 of the band's singles. Personally, I don't think I'm going to be picking this up because I don't think I actually own this one on vinyl, which I probably should be, considering I'm trying. Most of my Oasis collections on CD. Getting a lot of stuff on vinyl over the years has been a little bit difficult, especially when you have like these big compilation albums that are a lot more expensive. And the thing is, I won't be picking this up because it'll be beyond expensive. This thing is going to be at least $100 plus. I'll probably put it closer to the $200 range for those who are going to go line up for Record Store Day to pick this thing up. But I just don't really think it's really worth it for me to line up for this kind of thing. I do have Time Flies on CD. If it was one of those things that, if they had it left over on Record Store Day after the day of, if I went there on the Sunday or the Monday and they had it, and I had a couple extra $100 lying around, which I never do, that would be cool. Maybe I'd pick that up. But it is cool that they're taking part in Record Store Day. The last couple of Record Store Days I went and got, last year, Noel Gallagher's Magic Secrets #2 came out for Record Store Day last year, so I went and make sure to pick that one up. But there's really nothing here for me to want to line up for on Record Store Day. But if you want something that you don't have to line up for on Record Store Day, and you can pre-order online like all of us normal people do most of the time, Oasis is releasing a 25th anniversary edition of Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, which came out in February of 2000. It's going to be coming out on blue and purple marble, as well as silver LP, and you can actually get it bundled with a t-shirt that has some artwork based on the Go Let It Out artwork, which also came out in 2000. I'll pop that up on the screen if you want to take a look at that. And I was thinking, you know what, I already have a copy of Standing on the Shoulder of Giants on vinyl. Like, hold on, let me grab it right here. So I already got my copy of Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. It's not a great package. It's a pretty standard, LP package. I'm sure this is the one that most people have. It's a beautiful looking vinyl too. I never get tired of that artwork. Absolutely fantastic. But I have my copy of Standing on the Shoulder of Giants on vinyl, which is cool. Which means I won't probably pre-order this thing when, like, I've seen it on the Oasis website. I probably will not pre-order this thing. But here's the thing. If I was in a record store and I saw this thing on the shelf, I would definitely pick it up. If I saw this 25th anniversary edition, I would definitely pick it up, because like the last time this happened back in 2022, when Oasis released the 25th anniversary edition of Be Here Now in 2022, I saw the anniversary edition pop up for pre-order on their website, and I didn't jump on it. I'm like, you know what? I already have Be Here Now on vinyl. I don't need another copy of Be Here Now. But then not too long after that, I was in a record store here in Ontario, and I saw it on the shelf, and what did I do? I bought that sucker. So that's probably what would happen if I saw this other version of Standing on the Shoulder of Giants on the shelf in the record store. I won't pre-order it on the website, but if I see it on the shelf, you know what? Why not grab another edition of Standing on the Shoulder of Giants? And maybe it would actually be, again, I love the artwork on this record, but I find at least this copy of it that I own, I don't really know what particular pressing it is. I just find this particular version to be a little bit cheap, a little bit flimsy for such a cool looking record. It's still enjoyable, and I love the glossy look of the LP. But maybe can always use another version of Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. And also, while we're on the subject of that album and the singles released from that album, the band also released, or are going to be releasing a 25th, they just released it, a 25th anniversary 4K lyric video for Go Let It Out, which just celebrated its 25th anniversary on February the 7th, and actually posted a picture of the single on Instagram and on my YouTube community tab, because I mentioned that when Go Let It Out came out in 2000, like if you're an Oasis fan going back to, the beginning, the 90s, if you were an Oasis fan from the 90s, which I was, in the year 2000, that was like after an extreme Oasis drought. The last new music that we got from Oasis in 2000 before that was in January of 1998, when the band released the All Around the World single that had the Street Fighting Man cover, the Rolling Stones cover, but it had flashbacks in the fame. That was the last new music that we had for Oasis. And at the time, I was like 15, 16 years old, and that felt like an eternity. The long wait between that All Around the World single and the Go Let It Out single that came out in February of 2000. That was just, it felt like an eternity, that wait between it. So when Go Let It Out came out, in 2000. It was like the end of this long wait for new Oasis music. I was so excited. I heard the song and I actually tried to figure out the chords and go play it for my guitar class the next morning. Our teacher would let us get up and sing songs and whatever we wanted to play. And I said, this is the new Oasis song. It's called Go Let It Out. It's amazing. I probably butchered it for the class and probably made them think that this new Oasis song was absolute crap. But I was just that excited about it as an Oasis fan. And to me, Go Let It Out is still one of the best Oasis singles by far. There are so many great things I love about that track. I love the bass. I love the drum loop. Liam Gallagher plays an acoustic guitar in the music video, and Noel plays the bass, which I thought was really cool. The first video to feature Gem Archer before Andy Bell joined the band. Just remember being so excited about the release of Go Let It Out back in 2000, and it still is. The way the song kind of crescendos and builds over each part until by the very end, you got the whistles blowing, you got Noel Gallagher playing an awesome solo. It really is one of the best Oasis singles, and I think it's kind of underrated. Really hoping that Go Let It Out will be in the set list for the reunion shows later this year, but we do not know. And for now, you can check out this 25th anniversary lyric video, this 4K lyric video. It's very psychedelic. It's very Beatlesy. It's nothing really that crazy. I still prefer the original Go Let It Out video, but it is cool as a way to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Go Let It Out. And then you can pick up the bundle with the t-shirt, and you can get the 25th anniversary LP edition of Standing on the Shoulder of Giants and really celebrate this great Oasis album. I still think it's a great album 25 years later. But let me know in the comments below, what are your memories of Go Let It Out? What are your memories of the release of Standing on the Shoulder of Giants? Are you going to be picking up this 25th anniversary LP edition of Standing on the Shoulder of Giants? Let me know in the comments below. And that brings us to our final headliner topic for this episode of the Rock News Roundup podcast, and it is this. How long should a concert be? You're going to see your favorite band, you're going to a rock concert. How long should it be? How long do you think it should be for you to feel satisfied as a music fan? Would it be 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 30 minutes? Like, what is the ideal length of a concert? It's kind of like this debate as old as time, but it's been rearing its head lately because it's coming up again because of one Mr. Jack White, who is currently on tour around the world promoting his latest record called No Name. And I guess some Jack White fans online, fans everywhere, have been voicing displeasure. What? People voicing displeasure online? That's not been heard of, but they're voicing displeasure about the length of Jack White's set list, saying that he hasn't been playing long enough on this current tour, at least for their tastes or for the money that they're paying, which sparked Jack White to go on Instagram and say this. I'll pull this up for you so you can see it here. I'm going to try to paraphrase this as much as possible. But Jack White went on Instagram and he had this to say. So he's been hearing a lot of chatter throughout the year of this glorious electric touring about how long our sets are, quote unquote, supposed to be, as if the length of a show determines how good it is. I know we were living a current era where people like to say so-and-so played for 3 hours last night and brag about it the next day. But he wants his fans to say, or to know in his mind, that he has no intention of impressing people in that context. He mentions that the Beatles and Ramones played 30-minute-ish sets back in their heyday, which is absolutely correct, but things were different back then. And then he's saying that in this point in his life that he would prefer to play shows of that kind of length and maybe not go as long as other bands do. And then he goes on to say here that, you know, he doesn't want to have the big lasers. He doesn't want his sets or his shows to be like a Marvel movie or something like that. He doesn't need 3 hours to do what he needs to do to make a connection. There's no set list. It's not a Marvel movie. It's not a Vegas residency. It's nothing like that. It's rock and roll. It's a breathing organism, artistic stuff, blah, 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 all that thing. So basically he's coming back at his fans who have been complaining about the length of the show. So I wanted to kind of chime in on this, both as a musician, as a music fan, as somebody who's been to a lot of concerts over the years. I kind of wanted to jump in here and kind of say my quick thoughts on this, you know, and it's not an easy issue to face, right? Because there's always that interplay between band and artist. We all go to concerts. We all want to make a connection with our favorite artists. I think that's what we're trying to go for at every show, right? So I see all the points on this issue. From an artist perspective, really an artist wants to play however long they need to make the show good, which is what Jack White is saying in his Instagram post. He's like, this is the type of show I feel I can do to make it the most effective and the most enjoyable for the audience. And he's totally right about that. Not every show has to be long for it to be good. Not everyone is Bruce Springsteen, nor should they be. The thing about Bruce Springsteen is that he's an anomaly when it comes to concerts, when he's up there for 3 or 4 hours playing for that long, and that's good for him, but maybe that's not good for Jack White. So I think from an artist's perspective, like, you have to play what makes sense for the show, which is exactly what the point he is making. And it's like, and really when you think about it, as long as you're hearing the songs that you want to hear, I don't really understand the harm of that. If the set list has enough of the songs that you're going to hear, whether they're the hits, if you're more of a casual fan, you want to hear the hits. If you're more of a diehard fan, you want to hear some deep cuts, maybe among those hits. Totally, I get that whole thing. And I think that there needs to be a balance that needs to be struck. And I think that that's what Jack White's talking about. And actually went on Setlist FM, which is one of my favorite websites. I love Setlist FM, being able to look up set lists for any show, even shows that I went to years and years and years ago. Anyways, went on Setlist FM to take a look at Jack White's set list, and he does 16 songs. At least this is his most recent one, when he performed a couple days ago at Irving Plaza in New York. He did 16 songs, which includes the encore. So the regular set had 12 tracks in it. And then he came back on. He did another 4 songs, which included a lot of the big White Stripes hits and songs that people wanted to hear. Dead Leaves in the Dirty Ground, at least from my perspective. I'm not a hardcore fan by any means. Dead Leaves in the Dirty Ground, Little Bird, Hotel Yorba, Ball and Biscuit, Seven Nation Army. He's got so many songs throughout his different projects, whether that be White Stripes or Raconteurs or his solo stuff, Dead Weather, anything like that. He has a lot of songs in his catalog. So I have a hard time thinking that any set list he could do would properly satisfy every Jack White fan, because obviously he has so many different projects that he's done over the years, that makes it hard to put together. Like, he's going to be on stage all night if people wanted him to play every single song that they know and love in the Jack White catalog. And taking a look at this, I think this is a little bit short, maybe just a little bit short, when you only have 12 songs in the main set and you come out there doing 4 in the encore. There's not a lot of the big hits in there, which is maybe why some fans are leaving unsatisfied. I think a regular set more in the 20 song range with a couple of encores would make more sense. At least for me, I think that'd be reasonable for a show. You keep the audience engaged, but you don't lose them completely. And that's really what Jack White is trying to get at as well. And you know what? I'm a musician myself. I think I played over 500 shows in my career, and I've played all sorts of different lengths of shows. I played 30-minute sets. I played 45-minute sets, whether it be opening or at indie clubs or something like that. I played hour-long shows. I've played 3-hour-long shows. Like, one of the things my band used to do back into, like, when we were really, really gigging really hard, we were doing 3 sets a night for at least an hour. So we were playing from 10 p.m. or 9:30 p.m., 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. every single night. That was a very, very long show. And I always preferred to do something in the middle, especially as a singer who has to do a good job and still preserve their voice for the next night. That's another thing that people don't really consider as well, that Jack White wants to put a good amount of energy into his show. It doesn't seem like he ever phones in his shows. He's a very passionate musician. He's a very, very creative guy. And I don't really think that he wants to go out there and just run himself ragged for the purposes of making sure that people enjoy a longer show. And as a singer, as a vocalist, it's always that concern that you're going to be putting a certain amount of energy in your voice into each show. You want to be able to maximize that. You want to be able to feel good about that and still leave some gas in the tank as a vocalist for the next show. That was something I was always concerned about. I was like, yeah, I want to give it all tonight. I want to play all night long and make sure that everybody, I want to be on stage and be crowd surfing and just feeling everything and giving everything I got. But when you're on tour, you got to leave a little bit in the tank for the next night. And I understand that from an artist perspective as well. But then, even as a fan, I still like things to be a little bit a little bit tighter set wise. And I always go back to going to see Foo Fighters on their 2015 tour when Dave Grohl was injured. You guys probably remember that. He injured himself. He fell off stage in Europe somewhere. He broke his leg. And then for the rest of the tour, including their North American tour and their stop in Toronto, when I saw them, he was performing from a throne. He was sitting on a throne and playing guitar and singing from there, which was very, very cool. I always thought that was really cool. But the thing is, it was a great show, but it got very, very, very long-winded. Like Dave Grohl talked a lot that night, even more than usual. He was just kind of, maybe it was on pain medication. He was just like riffing and riffing and riffing. He was talking a lot, and I love Dave Grohl, but he talked a lot that night. And every single song, whether it be My Hero or Everlong or, All My Life, any of those Foo Fighters songs, every single song got extended into a 5-minute jam in the middle. And I found that enjoyable for the first couple of songs, but when every single song had that musical jam in the middle, it started to get really, really long-winded. And this is coming from like a hardcore Foo Fighters fan. Like, they are one of my top 5 favorite bands of all time. I love Foo Fighters. I would watch them play all night long. But even though I can only take so much before I was thinking getting out of there, before the rush, getting to the car, before the parking lot got too busy, that kind of thing. And that's really not what you want from a rock and roll show. You want fans to be satisfied, but you also want maybe people leaving more. And I know that's another point that Jack made. And then you gotta think about it from the fans' perspective as well, because it's 2025, okay? And we've talked about this on the channel. Lots of people have talked about this. Concert ticket prices are only going higher and higher. Going to a concert is getting more and more expensive by the day. Concert prices are absolutely insane, as is the price of most things in 2025 because of the hellscape that we live in our modern day. But I understand from a fan's perspective that we want more bang for our buck, right? Obviously, if we're dropping over $100 a ticket, which is pretty much the way it goes, like if you're going to see a big band, especially Jack White or anybody like that, guaranteed you're going to be shelling out at least over $100 a ticket, at least, to go see this, along with VIP and all these other perks that people pay a lot of money for, this and that. And then if the band only plays for an hour or an hour and 15, it feels a little bit like a ripoff. I totally understand that from the fans' perspective, because we pay so much money to go see concerts these days. And I used to go to way more concerts when they were a lot cheaper, right? Nowadays, it's a lot more money to go to a concert. You know, I spent a lot of money on my Oasis tickets for later this year in Toronto. And it's hard to justify spending more money on concert tickets when I already spent a small fortune to go see Oasis. Like, I used to go to more concerts when they were way cheaper. And now I have to definitely pick and choose which concerts I go to. So when I do go to those concerts, I want to get my money's worth. I remember last year or 2 years ago, actually, my girlfriend Danielle and I, we went to go see Don Broco, one of our favorite bands. We went to go see Don Broco in Toronto, and we were very disappointed, actually, because the set was a little bit short and they didn't play one of the key songs that we wanted to hear. They played every other big hit that they had except for Technology, which is one of our favorite Don Broco songs. We were disappointed about that. And then the curfew for the venue was 11 p.m. and there was a thing called a sound curfew. And I know this probably isn't something new, at least, but it felt new to me. There's a sound curfew. So the curfew for the venue was 11, but the sound curfew was 10:45. So the show was a little bit shorter than we were expected. And this was on a Saturday night in Toronto. And not to say like that it was too short, but it could have been a little bit longer. 11 o'clock on a Saturday night is early, especially for me when I used to play in bands until 2 o'clock in the morning. And then like bands are getting off stage at 10:45 at night. Like, I wish that I could get off stage at 10:45 at night. And the thing that Jack White also has to expect too is that not every music fan is looking for a Marvel movie in concert form with all the bells and whistles and all that stuff happening, or Pink flying over the crowd at her shows, or the big pyro and the big screens and all that kind of thing. Like, I don't really think we expect that from a musician like Jack White. He's a rock and roller. He does really, really raw stuff, and that's what we love about Jack White and why he's such a unique musician. But I think the thing at the end of the day is that we do want a solid night's worth of music. We want to feel like we got our money's worth. And I get the feeling that what we really want is we want to be able to get a feeling out of the concert, right? We want it to be long enough for us to be able to get that cathartic release. Like, if we're looking for a long set list or a longer set list, I feel like we're just looking for that point in the show where we can make a solid connection with the artist. And sometimes, we need a little bit of a longer show to make that connection. Not necessarily Bruce Springsteen level where he's doing 3-hour shows, but something a little bit longer. Like I said, a 20-minute set list to me feels like the right amount of songs for a set list. Of course, we'd always like a little bit more, but then like I said, with Foo Fighters, a band I love, Foo Fighters are one of my favorite bands of all time. Even I got a little bit bored when they went a little bit longer than they should have at a show. It's a very delicate balance of how long a show should be. The artist is trying to gauge how long they should do it. The audience wants to make a connection to the artist. And I think that is, again, like the main point that I'm trying to drive home is that we are all looking to make a connection with the artist. And so that might take a little bit longer. It might take a little bit shorter. But at the end of the day, as concert fans and as musicians or the people on stage, we want to make a connection. We want that connection to happen. And if it doesn't happen, I think that's why we walk away feeling more disappointed as opposed to, the necessary length of the show being long or short or whatever we think it's supposed to be. We just want to make a connection. I think that's what Jack White is going for as well. And because things do cost a little bit more these days, we want to make sure that we get that connection at the show. We want to walk away feeling satisfied. And I think that's what we're looking for. So for me, I think like a 20-song set list. I think Jack's set list of 16 songs. I feel like that's a little bit short, at least from my perspective as a musician and as a music fan. But I think, if he added in a few more songs and also made a set list that, you know what, nowadays, guys, at these concerts, there are the diehard fans. There's those of us who will love every single song. If I go see Oasis and they play, I Got the Fever from the Stand By Me single, they play something really, really random, Let's All Make Believe, if we want to talk about Go Let It Out. If they played it at the show, I'm sure me and a lot of other fans would be like, oh my God, they're playing this amazing deep B-side from their catalog from years and years ago. But for a lot of casual fans, that's not going to be interesting. And more these days, concerts are becoming, and they always have been, but they're becoming more for the general audience. It's less about those specific fans who want to hear this, that, and the other. We really need to put together a set list. I hate to say, you got to play the hits, but you really need to put together a set list that is going to satisfy the crowd. And that is the end thing, especially with concert prices being so much money. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think of this topic. How long is the ideal concert length for you? How long do you feel a concert has to be for you to get your money's worth when you go to a show? Is it an hour and a half, 2 hours? Do you want them to go full Springsteen and do 3 hours? Let me know in the comments below. How long should an ideal rock concert be? I think there'll be a really, really interesting discussion. But we're going to wrap up this show in a couple of minutes. But first, I want to give you guys my tracks of the week. I've picked a couple of key tracks this week that I want everybody to listen to. I'm actually going to put these all together on a Spotify playlist so everybody can check that out. But the tracks of the week, a couple of ones I want to mention. The first one is Stereophonics and their new single, There's Always Gonna Be Something. They announced, what's their new album called again? Let me just look this up again. They released it last week. It's a really, really cool song. And it's called There's Always Gonna Be Something. Okay, so the new album, I forgot what it's called. Make 'em Laugh, Make 'em Cry, Make 'em... Is that what it's called? Make 'em Wait. Make 'em Laugh, Make 'em Cry, Make 'em Wait. It's definitely a Kelly Jones album title. So Stereophonics, There's Always Going to Be Something. I think this is a cool track. I wish Stereophonics rocked a little bit harder like they did back in the day. They've gone a little bit middle of the road for me as far as their new music. And I was hoping that this new song would maybe be a little bit different than the stuff they released on their last album. It's kind of more the same, but I love Stereophonics. I have tickets to go see them in Toronto at Massey Hall coming up in March. So love the Stereophonics, love the band, love Kelly Jones' songwriting, and I just wanted to include them on my tracks of the week. So There's Always Going to Be Something. It's a nice, chill, upbeat Stereophonics song that I think you're going to enjoy. And then also wanted to do a track of the week for Black Sabbath because we were talking about their final show coming up very soon, and I'm not going to claim to know a lot of the deep Black Sabbath stuff. I'm very much a surface Black Sabbath kind of guy. So I'm going to give you my basic bitch answer for Black Sabbath, and that is War Pigs. Is one of my tracks of the week. I just love that song. War Pigs to me is one of the best Black Sabbath songs. Ozzy Osbourne's voice on that is absolutely incredible. And if there's like one of those songs, if you're going to play Black Sabbath for somebody who really, really had never heard them before, and you want a Black Sabbath song that's going to encapsulate their sound and what they're all about, then I think that War Pigs is the perfect Black Sabbath song for that purpose. So that's why I'm going to list it on my track of the week. And then my final track of the week, it may not be, get me any cool points on this episode of the podcast, but Huey Lewis in the News and Heart and Soul. For some reason, I've been on a huge Huey Lewis kick lately. I've always loved Huey Lewis's music. I haven't gone too deep, but I've always loved, the big singles. I'm a huge Back to the Future fan, guys. If you haven't noticed, I have a collection of DeLoreans behind me. So I'm a huge Back to the Future fan. So obviously I'm a huge fan of Power of Love, Back in Time, which are some of the key Huey Lewis tracks from that soundtrack. I also love, Hip to Be Square and some of his other songs, Heart of Rock and Roll. But I'm going to list Huey Lewis in the News and Heart and Soul, which I think is one of their best tracks. It's not actually an original Huey Lewis in the News composition. It was written for a couple of bands and artists before that. But I absolutely love this track, Heart and Soul by Huey Lewis in the News. It's just got a great feel to it. It makes me feel happy. I think that Huey Lewis back in the day, man, his voice was incredible. He hit a lot of really, really great notes, really high notes, just a really powerful melodic voice. As a singer, I really, really enjoy listening and singing along to Huey Lewis in the News, and really enjoy this song, Heart and Soul. I've been going down like a YouTube rabbit hole with watching all sorts of live Huey Lewis in the News stuff, and I've really, really enjoyed it. I know, again, not necessarily for people who are watching this channel, like, saying Huey Lewis in the News is not cool, I don't think. When the 90s came around and destroyed everything in the 80s, I don't think Nirvana would have been listening to Huey Lewis in the News, but I find him to be such a great artist, back then and still today, and I've been listening to a lot of Huey Lewis. So kind of an eclectic mix of tracks this week for the podcast. Stereophonics, there's always going to be something. Black Sabbath, War Pigs, and Huey Lewis in the News. How far can you get? Black Sabbath and Huey Lewis in the News, Heart and Soul. Those are my tracks of the week. And that is going to do it for this episode of the podcast, guys. Thank you very much for watching and listening wherever you're watching or listening. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this week's topics. How long should an ideal concert be when you're going to a concert? What do you think about Black Sabbath playing their final show? And if you're an Oasis fan, what do you think of those releases that are coming out very soon? Let me know in the comments below. Again, if you are watching this on YouTube, really appreciate it. If you like, share, and subscribe, would really appreciate that so you don't miss out on future videos. Make sure to rate and review if you're listening to the audio-only version on Spotify and Apple Music or Apple Podcasts. And make sure to follow me on social media across platforms at Nick Chino Music. But that'll be it for this episode of the Rock News Roundup podcast. Until then, rock on, everybody.